Go.
So the next question we had from Kara was from a local daddy, and he said, how can you deal with other people's awkwardness towards you? So I asked kind of what context he referred to that in, and he said an example could be that you're at a baby group with your other children. In this case, he's at a baby group with the twin that survived, and people in the group know that you have lost a baby, and the awkwardness comes from them not knowing what to say to you, how to approach you, should they say anything. But there's also that awkwardness of, well, do you as the parent need to then approach them? Should you say something, or who is that responsibility down to? How do you deal with that uncomfortableness in that situation?
Okay, so I think this is similar in a way. Some of the aspects are similar to what we were just saying with the last question about the comment of, at least you have another child. Or I think it's not your responsibility. It's never your responsibility to have to do something in this situation, and you shouldn't feel like I have to be the one to lead on it or to tell people what to do, or it's not your fault. At the same time, if people don't know how to react or respond, they may never know unless they're kind of spoken to. So that awkwardness, I guess what I would do personally is think about, what do I want to get from this? So do I want to keep going to that baby group each week? And if I do go, is that awkwardness, do I see it changing? Do I think I would like to speak to those parents, or do I just want to find another set of parents where it's not awkward? Or and if I say to myself, what I want is to be able to go and it not be awkward with anyone there, and I want to keep going to that baby group, then I might think, okay, at some point, maybe if they're not going to address it, then when I feel strong enough, I want to be able to say something to them to make it less awkward. But it depends. Again, I would pick a day where I was feeling stronger and more able. There might be one day where you go and you just feel like, I can't talk. In this example about the twin that died, or it might be about, if you've got a rainbow baby, it might be about your previous loss. There might be days where you can't talk about them and you don't want to, and actually you just want to go and enjoy that baby group with the baby that's here. And that's okay to just have a conversation with them, perhaps about the babies that are there, and to not address it. There might be other days where you feel like, okay, there's a bit of an elephant in the room here. I feel like people are avoiding me, or they're ignoring me, or they don't know whether to ask about it, or they don't know whether I'm happy to talk about the baby that died. And maybe if I feel strong enough and able to take the lead, then it might reduce that uncomfortableness. I know for me, when I went back to work, one of the first things I did was send an email to everybody. Actually, it was a few days before I went back to work, saying, I'm going back to work. When I come back, I want you to talk. I want people to be able to talk or ask me questions. I like to hear my daughter's name. Don't feel like you can't talk about her or acknowledge her. I like to hear about her, etc. And then people said to me, okay, now I know how to approach it. And so many people thanked me for that, because they said, okay, now I know what to do or how to respond. So I think some of that awkwardness could be reduced. It's not your responsibility. You shouldn't have to do it, but it might help you if you want to keep going to those kind of situations, if you feel able to say, it's okay to ask about whatever the baby who's died's name is. It's okay to talk about them, or to ask questions. Or I think people naturally are quite curious, and they might like to ask you how you feel about it or how you're coping, but they don't know if that's right or if that's going to upset you. Or so sometimes if you feel able to communicate that and take the lead, then people know what is okay and what is not okay, or what you want to do in that situation. Because I think otherwise there's a danger that you might feel like, I don't want to go to that group again, and then perhaps that parent guilt kicks in of, but I want, I don't want my child to miss out on a group because of it. Or potentially you could be left feeling a bit rubbish if it's not addressed. So yeah, I think that's what I would do as and when I felt able to. And I think, like we said with the last question, it's okay to do that in another means. If you know the families well enough and you've got their number to text them, or you have one person you get on well with at that group, perhaps you say to them, maybe they can have a conversation with the other people and communicate how you're feeling if you don't feel able to. It would be nice to try and communicate it. Did you have any other thoughts, Gemma, on things you might say or do in that situation?
I totally recognise when you said you just want to talk about them, and that's all I did at work. And I think that gave people an opening to then say, you know, so how big was he? How much did he weigh? You know, what did you dress him in? Oh, you actually gave birth to him, and ask questions where they, because it's such, for the people that haven't experienced this journey, it can be such a vast concept to get your head around. It's a bit like when you're trying to explain dying to a young child. For them, they have no experience with it, they have no prior connections with that. And for people, again, that haven't experienced the loss of a baby before, or even I thought, when they said to me, you know, you are going to have to give birth, and I kept thinking, but how? But why? You know, I had no, so being able to I just blurted it out in the office one day, and I just said, you know, feel free to ask me questions. I love the fact that people can ask me questions, because as much as I can talk about him and my experience, the better for me. And I think that's why I am where I am with my grieving journey, because I have been able to speak, and I have, you know, had those awkward conversations at the photocopying machine when someone wanted to say, you know, I'm really sorry, and I've just broached the subject with them and just said, you know, I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable about asking me questions about Oscar, and then it's just given an opening. So there are lots of ways and strategies to give that opening to people, but it has to be your call, I think. It has to be recognised that, or even if that's right for you. Some people would prefer to go back to work and it never be discussed. But with regards to the awkwardness, I do think you would tackle it. You need to tackle it in whatever way is best.
Yeah, as and when you've been able to. But as you say, I think sometimes the gentle thing to do can just be mentioning your child. So if the awkwardness is that, you know, you get a sense that they just don't know whether to say your child's name, if you feel able to, then you know, say if that were me, I might be like, oh, you know, it is sad that Jessica isn't here. I'm really grateful that so and so's here, but you know, I often think I'd love to see them play together, or you know, and just by the fact that I've mentioned her name and spoken about her, and that's been said, people then have an invite to ask a question, or you know, to be able to continue that conversation. Whereas if the name's just not said, and I think, okay, well, I best not say it. Or it's almost like I always felt like it's almost like people think I forget. It's like I don't ever forget. It's not like I need to be scared of saying her name, because I never forget she exists, or you know, I'm never going to hear it and go, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about her. Like it's just not possible.
Not gonna happen.
People just don't realise, do they? They try to. You know, it's very British, isn't it? Just talk about it, just have a lip, or and actually that's not the best way to deal with it often.
No, definitely not. And giving people that opening and using the name yourself. The amount of times I've said my son's name's Oscar, and like when they said, you know, that I was in a shop one day and a lady said, oh, I think that's the lady from Oscar's Wish Foundation, and I would just happen to hear them. I turned and said, yes, my son's name's Oscar, and oh, how do you know about Oscar's Wish Foundation? And it kind of spiraled on from then, and then they told me their story, and just say their name if that feels right for you. Don't feel that you've got to, and obviously environment is an appropriateness at the time, you know, we know what's right for us, don't we? I think.
It is sad. I think it's worth acknowledging. It is difficult that there's all these extra things to think about, that on top of losing a child, that you have to be the one that potentially addresses it with people at some point, or that it has this impact that you can't just go to a baby group and it feel normal, that people are uncomfortable around you or awkward around you. I think it's worth acknowledging that that can sometimes feel really sad and really unfair, that it's just another thing that we have to deal with on top of everything else. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to show a bit of compassion and empathy for that situation, because it's not nice to experience the awkwardness.
No, it isn't, and unfortunately it's something that we will face in certain scenarios, like at work, and when you go meet your friends for coffee, and it is something that comes up quite often. So I'm glad that question was brought to our forefront. I think it's a really good one to ask.
Yeah, absolutely.